Welcome to Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. Decoding the beliefs and strategies of global experts to give you an updated mindset to make the most of modern life. Hosted by the UK's most in-demand and highest-paid hypnotherapist, Adam Cox.
This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today we have a very special guest. It's Karen Darke, who is a Paralympian, an adventurer, and now founder of Quest 79. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam.
It's great to have you on here. So for those that haven't heard of you, haven't heard of your story, give us an introduction. You know, who are you? Who is the real Karen Darke?
Oh, now do you want the story or do you want the real Karen Darke? There we go.
Both.
Maybe I'm only just digging into the real Karen Darke. You know, my life has been full of adventure, full of challenges. I broke my back when I was 21, became paralyzed from the chest down, and I've always had a real passion for the environment and nature, but also for growth and learning. So I think the combination has sort of really catalyzed this journey of exploration in all of its senses, both the outer world and the inner world. So many people just see me as this person that must be an adrenaline junkie because they know me for doing adventures or chasing Paralympic medals. But I think the real me is actually just much more interested in the learning process and that process of human development and how we can become better, not only at doing things, but also, you know, as a human being, and find what I'm calling the gold within us. So my journey's been very connected to gold. When I was younger, I was a geologist studying gold in South America. Then I've spent 13 years in the Paralympic movement, racing a hand cycle and won a gold medal in Rio. And then that's kind of catalyzed me into this journey that's much more about, the gold inside of us all, and perhaps finding the gold in my own heart, as well as hopefully inspiring that in other people.
And I think gold for me is also a very kind of powerful, emotive word, because I buy into this kind of idea of emotional alchemy. And, you know, just as the alchemist had this mission to turn lead into gold, I think, you know, that emotional alchemy that you can turn, you know, things like trauma or stress or anxiety into really powerful, positive emotions, you know, that becomes the gold, you know, emotionally speaking. Thinking back to when you broke your back, what emotional journey did you go through at that point? You know, because it couldn't have been easy to kind of have your whole life, you probably mapped it out in a particular direction, and then suddenly it took a different trajectory.
Yeah, and just to echo that idea of the emotional alchemy, and I think, you know, on my website I write about being an alchemist. I think we all are in different ways, but certainly that feels like my journey with gold has been very connected to that. So I'm very much an advocate of the value in, well, what happens through trauma and the opportunity for growth, so post-traumatic growth. And it's something that I became very interested in the years after my accident, not only for my personal journey, but I also went on and did a higher degree studying post-traumatic growth in other people who've had accidents, and how people who dealt with it positively seem to be thinking, and the kinds of things that they were thinking, feeling, and doing. So clearly, when anything difficult happens to any of us, it's not an easy journey. But, you know, I think the good part of life is the contrast. We can't appreciate the good stuff without the challenging stuff. And so it was tough. And in the very beginning, I focused initially, like most people would, I was thinking about all the things I couldn't do anymore and feeling that frustration and sadness. And it took a few things for me to realize that actually I needed to completely flip up my mindset and reframe the scenario and go, look, there are loads of things I still can do. I'm really lucky to be alive. I still have the use of my arms. There's so much that I can do, and there's so much that's still possible, that I need to put my mind onto that instead of focusing on all the loss and the lack or the can't do. And I think that's a good metaphor for all of us, isn't it? And I've gone through many other traumas in my life since, which are much more on a par with what most people go through, be that career or relationships or anything else. And that's just constantly where I think we need to take our mind. It's very easy to think that we're a victim of circumstances. But actually, as you know, in the work you do, we can take control of our thoughts and retrain our brain and program our mind to see things very differently, and make our brain work for us so that our emotions can improve and our experience of life can improve.
How important was acceptance, to the process of, to achieve what you've achieved must require so much resourcefulness and so much focus and resilience and determination. But was acceptance a crucial part of moving from one chapter of your life to this new kind of adventure?
It's not a word that really resonates with me. I don't remember any particular kind of moment of acceptance or I think it's just so gradual, isn't it? That when we're presented with circumstances, to me, it was just a simple choice between, well, I can be a victim of these circumstances and be really sad and miserable and depressed and depressing, and I probably won't have any friends around me after a while, and I'm not going to be having a very good time. Or I can just put a brave face on here, and I think my expression at the time was fake it till you make it. And I'm not a great believer in not being authentic with your emotions, but there's also a time when we do just need to convince ourselves that we are okay and we can do this. So yeah, for me, it was much more of a choice rather than really sitting with the word acceptance. But maybe in some ways I was lucky, because I don't ever remember having a kind of, I didn't really have a big poor me feeling or an anger, or those kinds of things didn't really emerge for me. Or even, my accident was, I was rock climbing. I think it was, my own fault in a way. I never felt any of that kind of aggression or anger or anything around that. I think if anything, probably it's created a sense of a lack of trust in myself. And that's been very deep and profound on a subconscious level. And you can imagine that if you've fallen from a cliff and taken a decision not to back off, when actually looking back, my intuition was telling me, you need to get, you shouldn't really be pushing on here. I was very headstrong and not really listening to the deeper me. So I think that's led to a kind of lifetime journey within myself of that, building trust in myself and trusting my gut and my decisions, etc.
Yeah. From the point of, recovering from that accident and then kind of thinking of the future, how long was it before you started thinking, I'm gonna aim to be a gold, did you ever have the intention to win a medal, or was it that you found a sport that you were kind of interested in?
No, so that my whole Paralympic journey began a long time after I was paralyzed. I never had any intention. To me, the Paralympics meant pushing around an athletics track or swimming up and down a swimming pool, and I had no interest in those kinds of environments. I did do some wheelchair racing when in the early years of being paralyzed, but it usually meant traveling to English cities, and I was living in the Highlands or beautiful landscape of Scotland, so none of it really appealed to run 10 kilometers around an industrial estate or a red brick town in the north of England. So I never ever aspired to be a Paralympian. Heart was very much connected to mountains and getting back into nature and finding ways to share time in these beautiful places with friends. So it was kind of a surprise. How many years after my accident did I, maybe 15 years or so after becoming paralyzed, to suddenly find myself on this Paralympic journey? And it was very much inspired by the fact that there was a Games in London, by my passion for hand cycling, which was a fairly new Paralympic sport, and by this curiosity within me, which was, I've always been a generalist, like trying lots of things, doing all sorts of things, reasonably good at lots of things, fortunately for me, but never tried to actually specialize in anything. And I thought, I wonder what it'd be like just to put that focus on something for a few years and see what could happen. Little did I know that 13 years later, I'd be coming out of the other side of that.
Yeah, because sometimes you hear stories of people that, that have, I remember interviewing Chris Hoy, a few years ago, and he said that he used to, be on one of the hills in Edinburgh, looking over the city and kind of picturing, winning a gold medal and all this kind of stuff. Did you have a sense of visualizing a victory and things like that? Was that part of a mental rehearsal or a vision for the future? Or was it that, again, you just pursued it and then it almost kind of surprised you at how well you were doing?
I just pursued it for the passion of pursuing it. And my initial goal was just to take part in a Paralympic Games in London. I think it took me by surprise when I realised that I wasn't only going to the Games, but I had potential to win a medal. I won a silver medal there. And then that obviously sparked my curiosity then about, oh, I wonder what it would take to, if you really focused, could you win a gold? And actually for me, that next cycle, that next Olympic cycle became a real process of experimenting in all the things I'd learned about mindset, about focus, about visualizing. I trained in hypnotherapy and sports hypnotherapy and winning, how to create a winning image in my head and pre-race routines and all that kind of stuff. I made my own hypnotic recordings, kind of visualizing every single detail of a race and even down to when I would change gear, exactly what I'd be doing. And then probably about 2 years out from the Rio Paralympics, I just decided to call it Project Gold. And I didn't necessarily believe that I could win gold. I just called it that. And to be honest, in all of the competitions, I've only once ever won a gold medal. And I don't think the top competition was there. So it wasn't like I was a consistent winner, if that makes sense. I was often second or third or maybe fourth, but never winning. But for that 2 years prior to Rio, I bought gold shoes, I bought a gold phone, I called it Project Gold, and I just talked about Project Gold. I had an amazing bike made by Williams Formula One and had all these, incredible engineers working on it. And it just felt like through my inner world, it created the outer world, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And obviously, we're both, kind of students of hypnotherapy. Do you think at some level all of this kind of association with gold was programming your subconscious to influence the subconscious to manifest or create that outcome?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very, very interesting though. I think so I tried to recreate that in the run up to Tokyo, not necessarily for gold, but just to be there and take part. And I've had images of Japanese cherry trees and socks with cherry blossoms on them, all kinds of things, which kind of engaged my subconscious to want to be there. And it hasn't worked out. So I think and what I realized only last weekend when I went to race was that there's a difference between everything being really aligned, if that makes sense. So not just our knowledge of how to manifest things, but also like real heart alignment with it, if that makes, I'm sure that will make sense to you. And just last weekend, I realized that, my heart really isn't in trying to race and be the best. And it started to feel like I've done this, and this is almost becoming a form of physical abuse. Like my soul wants to do other things and create other things in the world. It doesn't want to just be going around in circles, still doing the same old. And it was quite a hard thing to realize and to make the decision around. But that's been another interesting journey. So my first journey to the London Paralympics was very much about this excitement and is it possible? And I called it the Olympic experiment. The second cycle to Rio was all about how is it possible if you really dig deep and focus and align everything to manifest, what you really want and the gold. And then this time it's been much more of I think just really connecting with my deeper self and really listening on a much deeper level to everything within me. And it's taken me to a surprising place of deciding to retire. So that's been quite a surprise.
And so for some people, when they arrive at the decision of retirement, it's quite a solemn, kind of sad experience, but you can't stop smiling every time you say retirement. So I'm guessing you're happy with this decision.
Oh, well, that's good feedback. So I'm still consolidating the idea. It's only been a week since I decided that. But yes, I did. A few weird things have happened this week where you go, well, maybe this is a sign that it's right. So I found a song last Sunday night it's a new one called Higher Power by Coldplay. And I suddenly found myself dancing around my living room to it, feeling really happy. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I think I'm supposed to feel sad right now. And then this week I've ridden my bike every day But for about 50% of those rides, my battery's gone flat on my computer. So it's just deleted all information. And, suddenly I couldn't be looking at how strong am I today? How fast am I going? And I was in the gym, and for some reason, all of my gym data from about the last 4 years just got deleted and was unretrievable. So it's almost like everything's just going shut down, shut down. And and I'm actually due to have an operation in 2 weeks' time that I've been delaying and neglecting because of my focus on competing in Tokyo and not wanting to interrupt it with surgery. So,
In terms, because it seems that you're very intuitive, and there is belief systems based around synchronicity and kind of clues out there. To what extent do you think that the accident that happened in your early 20s, do you feel that was life's plan for you and that needed to happen, or do you feel that happened and you just made the best of that particular situation?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't know, but there are a few weird things around that as well. So the night before I was paralyzed, I had a conversation with a good friend about a family friend of my family's who was paralyzed when his mudguard went into his bike and threw him over the handlebars. And the catalyst for the conversation was that my friend had a loose mudguard on his bike, and we were cycling back from the pub, and I said, you need to sort that out. And the very next morning, and my very exact words were, I cannot imagine anything worse than being paralyzed. I would rather be dead than paralyzed. And less than 12 hours later, I was paralyzed. So when things like that happen, it makes me really look at the power of whether it's some kind of universal plan or whether it's just the incredible power of our subconscious mind and programming and language. I don't know, but there's something.
Yeah, I mean, it's highly coincidental if it is a coincidence, just the close proximity between saying that and then kind of experiencing what you experienced. In terms of the the trauma that you went through, the severity of the accident, at some level, has that helped you deal with other areas of adversity in your life? Let's say your car breaks down or there's some kind of issue you're dealing with. You're like, yeah, but it's not something that, like you've already got through, if that makes sense. Does it change the benchmark? Does it make you more resilient and kind of immune?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a human being. So people always say to me, oh, you're so inspiring. And I feel terrible now that I've been complaining about my sprained ankle or something. You're like, no, it's all relative. I think that capacity to deal with the challenges that life throws at us really depends on what our capacity is at that time in terms of the stress levels that we're at. So there are times when I'm super calm when it's in the wake of, disaster or what you might view as something terrible. For example, in 2013, I was hit by a car when I was out hand cycling, and I was sort of laid in A&E joking about it, but it was pretty scary when you can't move an arm and you're a wheelchair user. That's not looking great for the future, but it felt like, okay. And then there's other times when my car gets towed away because I've parked it in the wrong place, and you're in absolute, floods of tears, can't keep yourself together. So I guess, and when I look at the cycles of that, I think it's all about that level of stress that you've got at the time and what your coping capacity is. So through my life as an athlete, I've really got tuned into what the warning signs are. I think most of us can recognize when we feel a bit emotionally frayed or we get upset, sort of in a way that doesn't really relate to the level of upset that it's, that's going on. It's a sign that we maybe need to back off and take some recovery and be kind to ourselves. So, but as a base level, I think it probably has. Yeah, I mean, it gives you that strength that, well, I've done that, so surely I can cope with this. And, it gives you that sort of center within yourself where you know that really it's all okay.
Absolutely. And winning a gold medal, puts you on in a very unique club. I'm sure it makes you a role model to, able-bodied, those that, maybe have got physical difficulties. Have people reached out to you asking for advice? Maybe they've had an accident, maybe in a similar situation. And what advice would you give for someone coming to terms with maybe some kind of physical, handicap at some level?
Yeah, a lot of people reach out, and we're all different and unique. So I'm not sure if there's any set of advice that we can give to anyone. I think really it's a lot of the advice that I give to people tends to be practical. So people maybe reach out for me for specific advice on how to start hand cycling or what wheelchair would I recommend. So on the emotional level, if I speak to people, I just try and listen and hold, support and hold that space with them. I think every journey is different, and it's a really tough process. And when I look back, my heart goes out to people that are going through those initial stages of grief and loss and adaptation to a whole different world. And basically it is a process of grief. I think once I was speaking to a woman on a train who lost her husband, and really understanding what was going on with her really made me reflect. It's just the same process, really.
And part of that grief cycle normally starts off with denial. Did you try and go through that? Did you experience that yourself, or you were like, no, this can't be true?
Well, it's quite hard to go through total denial. It's not very easy to suddenly, stand up and object to things and just start walking around. But on an emotional level, absolutely. I mean, I remember going back to university after hospital and just going to the gym and looking at people's legs moving and just staring at muscles and legs, just going, it's crazy. Like, why can't I move mine? It just seems, that's definitely like a denial process. But there's also a lot of research, there's some research out there which shows that our emotional set point, whether we experience something really amazing in life or really challenging, tends to return to about where we were after maybe 1 or 2 years. So I think the study that I've heard of is someone winning the lottery, and clearly their level of happiness or their emotional set point gets super sky high. They're so exciting, they've got all these opportunities, and then someone who is paralyzed and how your emotional set point drops. But the research says that after a year or two, you return to a similar level to where you were before. But we've all got that kind of natural level that we operate at.
Yeah, it's adjusting to whatever the change in circumstances are, and then becoming who you were again in that new situation. You've obviously looked at how traumatic events can have different impacts on people. Some people talk about post-traumatic stress and how it makes it impedes their life at some level. But you've also looked at how trauma and big life events can actually propel people forward. What have you discovered in your research there?
Well, I suppose a lot of the people I know, but I've also studied in more detail their stories, tend to be the people who seem to have responded very positively. And the elements that contribute to that are things like connecting with exercise, connecting with nature, connecting with people, all of the things that we know keep us mentally healthy, social connections, being healthy within ourselves, and having a healthy relationship with the world around us and our planet. So the people I know that have come through that well do tend to do those things. And certainly my biggest support whenever things have got really tough has always been the friendships and the social connections with people. It's really easy just to get buried in our lives and our busyness sometimes, and almost not realize or forget the importance and the value and the incredible support that we get and give to each other. And I think COVID's been a great reminder of that, hasn't it? For so many, and maybe the people who've struggled more are those that perhaps have shut down a bit and not had the connections that are helpful to keep us all going. So yeah, those elements have certainly been important, I think, for a positive navigation of the tough stuff.
And they say that it's not necessarily what happens, but the meaning that you give to what happens that is really the determining factor of how people process that. If it holds them back, makes them a victim, or kind of propels them forward. Thinking back now, what meaning do you now give to your accident?
I don't know if I give any meaning to my accident. I think what I've done is always sought meaning in the life that I'm living since then. So the classic on it is Viktor Frankl's work, isn't it? In
search for meaning. Yeah.
And being in a prisoner of war camp and just having that meaning and purpose. So And people, I have a friend who's done a lot of did a lot of interviews with women who are in prison, and actually they found more freedom in prison to live the lives that they want to live, and therefore enjoyed it much more. So I think it's all, for me, it's always about finding the curiosity in the situation and starting to wonder, what could I learn from this? How might this help me grow stronger? And how might I be able to help other people with this in the future? So that's what's given me my meaning. And that's probably what I've done right through my journey since becoming paralyzed. Just see it as an opportunity to learn something, to become stronger, and then to share that with other people. So one thing that I feel really privileged in my work, not just as a coach, but also speaking to audiences, is that I just like to reflect on my quite unique experiences, I suppose, in sport and adventure, but make that connection to what does this mean potentially for other people? Like what's interesting in this that I could share with people that might help them. And I guess that's where I found a lot of the meaning.
No, fantastic. And we talked a little bit about gold and the symbols of gold all around you in the run up to Rio. When you think about gold, metaphorically speaking, you know, almost like an inner gold, what does that mean to you, and how can people find their own inner gold?
Yeah, so I think we've all got it inside us. And what I mean by that, I suppose, more than happiness, it's probably just that sense of peace, so that when the world is crazy around us, or when lots of difficult things are happening, we do keep that kind of emotional set point of being fairly balanced. And that means that we can experience some wonderful emotions often, as well as be more peaceful through the difficult stuff. But I think we get tarnished by the events of life, and you know, all the kind of classic cultural societal stuff of, you're getting old, that's how you should feel, or people just get more cynical as they go through life's events. I love to just kind of burst through all of that and go, look, we're all amazing beings. We've all got so much we can do and so much light we can shine on the world. And if we just get the, you know, when I was a kid, my mum used to get me cleaning brasses with that brasso stuff, but the equivalent of that for gold, you know, just scrub off the tarnish and go, where is it? And I think sometimes to do that, we need to just be getting out of our comfort zones and experiencing new things and connecting with people, and to find that bright stuff inside of us.
Absolutely. And I guess more recently for you, being the founder of Quest 79, where did the idea of that come from? And tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's been very organic in its evolution. So I used to be a gold geologist. I'd actually forgotten, to be honest, that 79 is the atomic number of gold until I won the gold medal in Rio. And this number 79 just kept cropping up all around me all of the time. Whether that was my brain looking for it, but it seemed to be a bit more than that. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's the atomic number of gold. That's interesting. And I think after Rio, I was looking for a new project myself and really wanted to raise some money for the Spinal Injuries Association, who'd helped me a lot through my journey initially. And climbers climb the 7 summits on the 7 continents. And I kind of always liked the idea of hand cycling around the world, but it would take me so long. I don't really want to sign out of my life for 4 years. So I thought, well, I'll cycle the 7 continents. So that's kind of began as a bit of a thing. And then people started coming with me on the journeys who perhaps never done anything like that before, or they hadn't ridden a bike since they were a kid, or they'd never camped, or just kind of got into that zone where because none of the journeys have been supported. They'll literally just turn up with a bike and a pannier and a tent, eat porridge, set off on the road and see what happens. And I realized that people were getting sort of transforming through that in different ways. And Quest 79 was born. I thought, right, well, if I encourage other people just to do things that they wouldn't normally do, even if it's a much, you know, obviously much more smaller scale, people don't all want to travel or can't travel around the world. So do things at home in your community, connected to the number 79, and just let's see what transformation might happen, with the idea that that then ripples on and impacts the people around you, the communities around you, and, you know, spreads those ripples around the world. So that's where Quest 79 has come from and how it's evolved. And now we're just setting it up as a social enterprise to try and take the work further and deeper. And thank you to you for getting involved in the special day on the 7th of the 9th this year. where we're getting people like you that we're calling inner gold guides around the world to offer insights to mind and heart and body and emotional and mental, physical well-being, and getting people really engaged with Quest 79.
Yeah, no, I think it's, it appeals to my drive to kind of go out of my comfort zone, because, as a personality, I'm very shy, very introverted, and I effectively was a recluse at the age of 19. I had such social anxiety, I couldn't leave my room. So had I accepted that as that was my fate, there's very little that you can do if you can't interact with people, if you can't actually leave your environment. So for me, it was necessary for me to go out of my comfort zone. It was necessary to kind of turn anxiety into courage and confidence. And I feel like any kind of challenge that, makes you evolve as a person has far more benefits than the thing itself. It has that ripple effect. What are some of the challenges and things that people have done so far as part of your Quest 79?
Yeah, there's some really fantastic ones. Some of the ones young people have been doing, for example, one of the first people that got involved was an 11-year-old boy from the Isle of Skye, and he decided to climb 79 peaks in 79 weeks, which is a long time when you're 11. That's a big chunk of your life. He didn't even particularly like mountain climbing, neither did his family, and he got all of his friends and community involved, and they raised a lot of money for an African children's charity. A young girl, Chloe, 10 years old, cerebral palsy, can't walk, decided, I want to do that, cycled 79 miles on a tandem with her dad and raised 7,000 or something pounds for spinal injuries. Two young girls, Dee and Ray, 7 and 9 years old, making 79 podcasts. It's called Our Messy Rainbows, to help kids with messy heads during lockdown, with the idea that we can all find the rainbows inside us. And nice. Gairloch High School in Scotland, they're just on their quest just now. It's amazing. Everything from 79 days of tree planting, litter picking, community projects, to doing jobs for locals to raise funds, along with obviously all the physical ones like 79 days of walking, miles of cycling, etc., etc. So everything, I'm talking about it being connected to the idea of ice. So I is inner gold. The reason for the ice idea is that we put ice on physical injuries, but often we don't do anything like that for our emotional injuries or our environmental injuries. So I stands for inner gold, find that good stuff inside you. C stands for connection. So it's all about building those connections with friends and communities. And E stands for environment. So just having a more compassion for the environment around us and protecting it. So all of the projects are connected to those sorts of threads, basically.
Fantastic. And obviously it's a very inspiring quest that you have right now. Is this going to fill the void that has been created in terms of the time you'll now have as a result of retirement, or do you have something else in mind? What does the future look like for you?
I think if I'd retired 4 years ago, there would have been a void, but actually right now there isn't a void. I'm going, how am I going to fit all this in? So I'm doing quite a lot of work as a coach, and that is taking up quite a bit of time. I'm involved in a couple of amazing projects to do with the environment. One of them is the last of my quest to go to Antarctica, to the point which I discovered after we'd begun all of this, that the intersection of 79 degrees latitude and longitude, west and south, is in Antarctica. So we're going to go there and create a new pole called the Pole of Possibility, along with another incredible young lady, Iona, who's 20 and has suffered quite a lot through lack of confidence herself, and also as part of the Ariana Grande bombing in Manchester. So had quite a lot of post-traumatic stress from that. And she's connected to a Scottish charity called the Polar Academy. So she's been speaking to and inspiring a lot of young people around Scotland through her story and her journey. So her and I, along with a few others, are going to the Pole of Possibility January next year. So that's taking a lot of time up as well.
I'm sure. That sounds amazing. And obviously you are an adventurer. A lot of people listening to this won't be, they will prioritize comfort over adventure. What tips or what advice would you give to help people be a bit more adventurous, and sell it to them? What's the benefit of being a bit more adventurous? Because a lot of people, if it's too difficult, if it's going to make them, feel pain or cold or anything like that, they won't do it. So what's the payoff of actually being a bit more adventurous?
So I think it depends on your definition of adventure. So there's lots of times in my life when I've been stuck in a bed for 6 months, when I was first paralyzed. Since then, multiple other times through various accidents, illnesses, stuck in a room for months on end. And I think adventure is just all about adopting a different mindset and a different way of seeing the world. And it's really easy just to get stuck in a rut with things, whether that's with our eating habits, just our routines. So an adventure can be something as simple as just deciding to change a routine that maybe makes you feel more healthy. If you're fed up of feeling fat and sloppy, then do something, have an adventure with it, someone is doing a quest at the moment and they're trying to eat 79 different fruits and vegetables, which is quite a good little adventure. So, I think it's just, I think the definition of adventure that I like is a journey with an unknown outcome. And I think if we're all willing to begin one of those, it just brings a bit of interest into everyday life. If you're feeling a bit stagnant, a bit bored, a bit, too much in your comfort zone, a little adventure can do wonders.
Absolutely.
Lighten life up.
That's it, because I think a lot of people are trying to pursue happiness. They're trying to pursue, material things, but actually sometimes you actually get the juicy emotions, not from the end, but from the journey. And actually it's the happiness in the pursuit rather than the pursuit of happiness. If someone is inspired, they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Quest 79, where's the best place they can go for more information?
Well, my website is karendarke.com, and Karen with a K and Darke with an E on the end, so DARKE. And Quest 79 is quest79.com, add in the letters rather than fully spelled out, so QUEST79.com.
Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm certainly inspired. I'm gonna try and be a bit more adventurous after this conversation. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Adam, likewise. It's been really nice to meet you, and I really, really appreciate the conversation. It's been great. Thank you.
Fantastic. And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again soon for more.
Thank you for listening to Modern Mindset with Adam Cox. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review. Modern Mindset, picking the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours.